Hello, welcome to this not book review. So, just the other day, I was watching someone else's channel. I think it was Richard from SF Vintage Books, and he commented on the fact that his channel had been going for a couple of years, or it was a channel anniversary. That made me think, I wonder how long my channel has been going for. So it turns out that I just missed my 2-year anniversary. I've never been good with anniversaries and dates and birthdays, to be honest. It's not my skill. But yes, on the 26th of May in 2023 was when I posted my first review. That was for Andre Norton's Cat's Eye, I believe. And I thought, wow, I should do something to commemorate. And I should also take a moment to thank you all you lovely people who have subscribed. I have over 500 subscribers now. I honestly, when I started this channel, I never expected to get more than a few close friends. But more than just subscribers, I've met some wonderful books. I've seen some wonderful YouTubers, people who read the things that I read. And that is so special, because growing up, I had my parents who read science fiction, but no one of my own age. No contemporaries, no people who I could really share my feelings and thoughts about books and the importance of books with. My sister as well. But that's it. We were a little island of science fiction and fantasy readers in a sea of naysayers. Now I've got great friends, but again, I don't have a lot of people that I can discuss these books with. So having BookTube science fiction, classic science fiction readers, and having BookTube literature readers, it's like this wonderful community of people that I can relate to and who read the things that I enjoy reading and listening to. So thank you all of YouTube or BookTube who has made my reading so enjoyable. There's not a lot I can really offer people. I have the fortune of living in the wonderful country of Australia. The downside to Australia is postage. I'm deeply envious of all you booktubers in the UK or the US who can send books to each other. But the last time I sent a book to the UK, it was $36 one way. So that's not going to be happening here. I know some people start doing merch at some point. That sounds like a lot of work, and I can't see myself posting that, because then people might feel obliged to buy it when they don't really want it. I don't know. Do people want merch? One thing I can do, however, is show you over my bookshelves. I'm really proud of them. I love my books. I love my bookshelves. I've never done a full tour. It's going to be really long. It'll probably take more than an hour. You don't have to watch it, of course, but maybe you can flick through and see some books that you like, that you've enjoyed, that you want to discuss. And that is one thing that I can do for my now over 500 subscribers to show my appreciation. If I'm doing this book tour and you see a book on my already read shelves that you would like me to review, or you would like me to reread and then review, because some of them it's been a while, by all means let me know. I am thrilled like a kid with a new present in Christmas time when I see new subscribers signing up. And I love it when you comment, and I love discussing books. So here we go. Let's start in the living room before we actually go into the library, where the magic happens and where the chaos and dust and corners lurk forever. Enjoy. So looking through from the living room, there's the room that was meant to be the spare room when I moved in, but is now, without doubt, the library. Now, when I first moved here, I planned to make all this wall in the living room into bookshelves, but this is a very light apartment. So the books on that wall were fading, and I had to get them somewhere safe, so they moved into the library. However, before we get there, we've got this little shelf here. It's a glass-fronted shelf, which I adore, since it means that you don't have to dust the contents as much. Dust is not my friend. Here on top, I've got the tiny little collection of pocket paperbacks, pocket penguins, that were being published a few years ago. I really love them. I've always picked them up whenever I could find them. They're getting rare now. So this glass-fronted bookshelf is essentially my non-fiction. I don't know if I can make my camera focus on what's inside, but on this shelf, for example, we've got a whole lot of historic stuff like the Poetic Edda, the Kalevala from Finland, and then you've got some non-fiction like the Sea Kingdom, Viking women, and some biological science. So Moby Duck is an excellent story about plastic and its distribution in the ocean. Next to it is Song of the Dodo, wonderful book about Wallace, who discovered what Darwin did at the same time. On this side we've got more ecology, more mythology, myths from Mesopotamia, but shoulders with fish of the ocean, that's Tim Winton there. And a bit further down we've got Thomas Hardy, Hardy, The Open Sea. We've got a bit about fossils, a lot of Simon Winchester, the story of DNA, and Rachel Carson, King Solomon's Ring, which is one of the first ethnologists. Moving down, we've got a whole heap more marine stuff, herring, cod, another copy of King Solomon's Ring, because it's just such a marvellous book that I can't not buy it whenever I see it. And down at the bottom we've got a little bit more zoology, a few random history things like Necropolis, and some true story travels. We've also got Sinbad's Journey, a great book by Tim Severin where he recreates historic journeys. That one's a beauty. In this one we've got a bit of geology and botany. It's hard to find people who can write good stories about geology and make them fun, but A Journey Through Stone by Ian Pilmer is definitely one of them. Chris Hammer is an Australian author who's better known for his fiction, but he's also done some non-fiction, and there's some of it. Inga Simpson, another Australian author. This one's about trees of Queensland. And again, a whole lot more marine biology. Above here we see a whole lot of books that I've had for a long time and which are consequently rather hard to read. We've got some Lyle Watson, The Bible is History, quite a few cookbooks. Some of them are historic cookbooks. So we've got Making Mead and a Chinese cookbook written by Benedictine sisters just before, I think it was World War I in China. A few more books. Here's where some poetry starts. We've got some T.S. Eliot, some Wordsworth, whole heap of different miscellaneous Dickens in their beautiful old covers that I would love to protect, but I keep reading and that doesn't help them. Egil Saga's there as well. So that's my wonderful glass-covered, if not dust-free, then at least low-dust shelf. Sorry about the jerkiness. I still haven't mastered this technology stuff. Now, the corridor would be wasted space unless you did something with it, so I had these purpose-made bookshelves. Again, initially these were favourite books, but they do get a lot of light up there still, and they fade. So it's a bit more of a transitional shelf there. That cupboard, by the way, it was brooms and buckets when I moved in, but now it's shelves and it's got a lot of my trade paperbacks and comics. It's also a mess, so I'm not going to open it up. On top of the cupboard, you can see quite a few of my ARC copies, or readers' copies. Those are books that publishers send out for people to read and provide a review of. I used to do a lot of that. I don't do as much anymore. But you can't sell them afterwards, so you either have to find someone to give them to, or you hold on to them, like me. Up here are some of my old Pelicans and my growing collection of Agatha Christie. I do kind of want to have all of the Agatha Christie books one day. There's a lot of them. I've got quite a few already. There's some Bill Brysons that I just can't get rid of, even though I don't find him easy to reread. A few more Pelicans and some Crime Puffin, and a random miscellaneous of books that I have mostly read. There's a couple there that I haven't. There's some Alice Peters at the end. There's my Josephine Tays on the edge and some E.E. Doc Smith. The other side doesn't really count. It's just DVDs. Right, onward into the main room. Okay, topography of our reading room slash library slash magic room, because books are magic. Okay, so I have done a couple of little mini shelf reviews, but this is just going to show where everything is. For a start, we've got here in the middle, random shelf, which has got a lot more to do with my CD collection than it does books. But down the bottom, there's a few books I'm starting to accumulate that are either double ups, that I need to decide what I'm going to do with them one of these days, a few that are from the most recent book haul, etc. Over here, we can see a lot of my trade paperbacks and larger art type books, not all of them by any stretch of the imagination, but there's quite a few of them there on display. And that's where you would normally have a painting sitting behind me while I'm recording, because the light is pretty good here. Over to this shelf, which is not so much a shelf as a repurposed buffet or dresser, perhaps you might call it. This shelf is books that I have read, but sometimes not completely. There's a lot of reference books here on this one. It's primarily non-fiction and reference. But reference books, you sort of read very specifically. So this is the other non-fiction shelf. You've already seen the non-fiction shelf outside. These are books that tend to be larger and can't fit on it. So once again, we've got a lot of marine and diving themed books here. We've got a picture of the foraminiferans. That was my first ever electron microscope picture. And over here we have got my short stories unread. I decided I needed to redefine their position, because if I pick up an unread book and it turns out to be short stories when I wasn't expecting it, I get grumpy. So they're here. Over here we've got a few more art books, a couple more trade paperbacks, some Australian mythology, and various miscellaneous. Down to the next shelf. Again, we're in non-fiction territory here, so we've got some history, we've got the Crusades, very adequate telling of barbarians by Terry Jones, and various microhistories, Route 66 AD, which is Roman history, Buried Treasure, which is actually about gemstones, etc., etc. We've got a little bit of military in there with About Face by Colonel Hackworth. We've got a few miscellaneous stories of various types of crime, in the case of Grave Secrets, reincarnation, when you're looking at a little bit of religion. Moving over here, we've got a lot more art books, and over here we've got some fiction that just doesn't fit on the other shelves. So we've got Anthony Eaton's Skyfall trilogy, which is called the Dreamlands trilogy. They are some of the best dystopia I've ever read. They're thoroughly Australian. I don't understand why no one's heard of them. I need to reread them. We've got my Lord of the Rings trilogy. I say mine. My father gave them to my mother as an first anniversary present. As you can see, we all read them a lot. Still love them though. Down here, we're still in non-fiction. We've got a lot of criminology books from my second degree, a few more true crime books, and a couple of my mythologies are in here in no particular order. So we've got Carl Jung, Marie von France, Dreams and Symbology. We've got a few more science books here, The Birds at My Table by Darryl Jones, Immense World by Ed Jung. There were two beauties that I read recently. And along here we've got a whole lot of random stuff, from Asterix to food ethics, the microhistory of Turkish carpets, which are usually not Turkish, a history of London. That took me a while, that book did. Great book, but oh my god, did it take a while. And a whole lot of other microhistories, a little bit more religion and food. Moving down to the bottom, we've got a lot more textbooks down here from my first degree, which was zoology and marine biology, my working life, which has mostly been histology, and a few other books, like a couple more trade paperbacks in there, a couple more art books, and a few fictions just didn't seem to fit anywhere else before I got bored of reorganising my shelves instead of reading. Here we've got a few more trade paperbacks as well. We've got more Asterix. I was right into Asterix and Obelix when I was younger. And miscellaneous books. Some of them quite unusual, some of them quite special. All of them beloved, and the ones that I just cannot allow myself to get rid of. I did once try to count how many books were on this shelf. It was impossible. Over here by the window, we have got... These two shelves are my shelves of shame in that they are my acquired unread. I've mostly alphabetized them, so they do kind of start from Asher and Bren. Going down, I think we make it as far down as K. There we go, some Stephen King. Going across to the larger bookshelf, which is a solid timber, which is lucky considering how much is on it. Way behind there where you can't see it, all the Tanith Lees that I want to reread or read for the first time. A whole heap of other ones from recent book hauls when I really didn't need more books now, did I? But wait, I did. I really did. And going down all the way down to Jack Vanson's Zelazny. There's a lot of books on here that I'm excited to read. I just need to get around to them. Okay, so those are my two acquired unread bookshelves. Moving around away from the window, we've got a chipboard bookshelf, which is miscellaneous combination of ones that I've read, ones that I haven't read, ones that I want to get rid of, ones that I can't decide if I want to get rid of. Enough said about that. Moving around to my second purpose-built bookshelf. My first one is all the way on the other side of the room. And there it is across there. That was my first purpose-built bookshelf. I was thrilled by it. It took me a couple of years to fill and then overfill. It's taken me a lot less time to fill and overfill both of them together. So this one is a bit over a metre. I can't remember the exact measurements. It starts from the top there where I've got a pile of poetry books that are old and in poor condition because they were my parents'. Going across, I've moved the A's like Aldous, Douglas Adams, and up to the top there. Book ended by A Few Lonely Planets. We continue down with the A's into Austen. Ian M. Banks is the beginning of my B's. Jennifer Government by Max Barry, another well underappreciated Australian science fiction author. And a whole lot of other books. Now, I only alphabetized my books for the first time when this bookshelf was built. I'd always kept them by subject, much as I do, kind of, with my non-fictions. But I found that with two bookshelves, it was too difficult to tell where things were. So B's, a couple of Brontes, a lot of Anne Bishop, a bit of Bryn. I am enjoying the alphabetized system. It's making it much easier to think about books as well as remember books. So as you can see, not everything here is science fiction. I've got a lot of old penguins and various other types of fiction in here. Why do I have two copies of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, you may ask? Well, actually I used to have three. I used to have mine, I used to have my dad's, and I used to have my mum's. But I got rid of mine. It was the newest, and I liked it the least, and it was in the worst condition. We all read them, we all loved them. I need to reread. So yes, Susan Collins, The Hunger Games, whatever you can say about that, I think it's a great book, and all of my Edmund Coopers, which I really like that author. Dumas, Father and Son, various unusual ones are in here. So the Changes trilogy by Peter Dixon is technically a kid's book, I believe, but it's a really, really good alternative universe dystopia. Loved it. A few Philip K. Dicks are in there. Daniel Defoe. The Book of Shame of Australia by Helen, who doesn't exist. Charles DeLintz, not all of them, many of them are down on the bottom shelf, but many of them, and as you can tell by looking at their spines, they, like many of my other books, have been well read for a long period of time. Now, I've mixed in children's books and adult books, which was difficult for me because I've always kept the children's books very separate to the adult books, but I found it interesting combining it by author, and it's actually really, really helped me to find links between books. It wasn't until I alphabetized them that I realized that a couple of my favorite books were actually by the same author. Okay, Neil Gaiman, whose books I love, though not as much as his trade paperbacks, which are on the other shelf. William Gibson, who I adore. Okay, Charlaine Harris is better known for her Sookie Stackhouse books, which are on the bottom shelf, but she actually wrote a quartet of The Grave Secret, which are really excellent books, far better than her Sookie Stackhouse ones ended up being. Got some non-science fiction there with The Dressmaker and Shannon Hale. Shannon Hale is one of the people who can do modern fairy tale telling better than many people, in my opinion. The Last Born of Elvenwood by Linda Helderman is possibly the most adult fairy book I've ever read. Even Thai Girls Cry, because if I go to another foreign country, I try to pick up some local books there that were written by people who were there. Roberta Galles is the person who, though they are quite obviously historical romance, the person I credit with getting me into history in the first place. Before that, I'd never really had a connected sequential idea of history. I just had individual events, but she gave me sequence and she made politics sound interesting. Okay, we're going to skip back up here a little bit to fairy tale. There's the other adult fairy tale by Raymond E. Feist. Been a while since I read that. Might well be time to go back again. Okay, here we have got the Charlaine Harris Sookie Stackhouse series, not all of them. They got pretty bad after a while. So I've got the main solid ones that the HBO show was based upon, very loosely based upon. We've got Simon Hawke. I'm collecting the Time Traveller series by him. Some of my Harry Harrisons, but not even a third. Most of them are actually on the to-read shelf because I want to reread them. It's been too long. Robert Heinlein. These are all ones that I've read and reread over again, except for The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. The only Heinlein I have never been able to get into or finish. It's bizarre. Tanya Huff, one of the best. She also did spooky stuff. That's the Bloodline one. But one of the best space opera I have ever read is the Valor books. I don't have all of them, unfortunately. They're hard to find in Australia. And here we've got a few Stephen King. I loved his Bachman books. I never let go of that. Kipling, adore him. MMK. I could talk about MMK for quite a long time, but I won't. The Business of Death by Trent Jamson, a Brisbane author and one of the better, I would say, supernatural fantasies. Supernatural alternative universes probably out there. Benedict Jacker series and a lot more paperbacks. Aldous Huxley, as you can quite clearly tell, I mostly inherited from my parents. And there's the rest of Tanya Huff. Now there on the bottom shelf is the one shelf that I've made that is larger. It's designed, all the other ones are designed to be for mass market paperbacks, but the bottom shelf is not. It's meant to be for the authors that should be on the shelves above, but I've got these tombstone-sized books that are too big to fit. I don't much care for hardcovers, but for some people I'll make an exception, like Charles DeLint and Terry Dowling, a much underappreciated and very hard to get Australian author. I need to reread them. I'm very glad to have them. I will never plan to let them go. Okay, so that's my first shelf, in that it is A through to L, full of treasures and beloved books. On to the next. So I guess here I'm saving the best for last. This was my first purpose-built bookshelf for paperbacks, and I was very proud of it. It was raw timber when I received it. It is actually embedded in the wall where our built-in wardrobe would previously have been for this apartment. But though it started off as raw timber, I shellacked it myself. I like shellacking. And you can see that it is slowly developing that beautiful darkening of the timber, especially in comparison with, say, the newer bookshelf, which has also been shellacked and for around about as many layers, but is still in the process of darkening. Okay, so since A starts up there, we move around to L. L starts on the other shelf but continues here. This top shelf was previously my children's books shelf, but you can see a lot of Mercedes Lackey there. I was a big Lackey fan for many years, and I'm still very fond of some of her series, though less so of others. Despite not being a kid's book, a fair number of books are up there as well, because my C.S. Lewis, my Narnia books are up there also. And then we move into Tanith Lee. I've read a lot of Tanith Lee, but a lot of it was a long time ago. These ones up here, the ones that I've read recently enough to really remember the stories, and the ones that I don't remember will sooner or later migrate onto the to-read shelf. Going down one shelf from Lackey, we have got Robin McKinley, one of the other people who can really write a modern fairy tale well. It's a special skill. And she also has written one of the best alternative universe vampire books I have ever read, which is Sunshine. A very underrated book, I think. Not too many people talk about that. So we've got a few other interesting things there. We have got a few of my old paperbacks. Nancy Mitford is there, though not all of it. Some of it's on another shelf for no reason I understand. John Marsden, really, really good Australian alternative history there. And moving across into Juliet Aurelia, good fantasy author. Jack Ludlow, who wrote some beautiful historical fiction of the more military style. And Mark Lawrence, a recent discovery of mine. I only found him last year. Really loving his writing. Then we've got The Further Adventures of Millie Molly Mandy, stuck there in the corner. I know that one person on YouTube recently got those books, which was funny. And here we've got my Richard Matheson. I don't have all of his I Would Like More. Great books. I have always had a copy of I Am Legend my whole life. Not necessarily that copy, because they tend to collapse after a while. But ever since I first read it as a teenager, I never let go. Anne McCaffrey, all of her Pern books that I've read, I've got. I think I've read all of them by now. And her Crystal Singer books. Some of her other ones, I mean, I like The Ship That Sang and a few of the dinosaur ones and stuff, but it was really the Pern books that caught my attention as a teenager. Elizabeth Moon was my second introduction to space opera. I didn't even know the word when I was reading Elizabeth Huff, but after I started reading Elizabeth Moon, I figured it out. Oh, not as much Moorcock as I could like, but most of my Moorcock hasn't been read recently, and so it is on the to-read shelf. Now, we've got the Courtney Cameron books by Ted Naif, 1, 2, and 3, which I really love. They are one of the few trade paperbacks that will, one of the few graphic novels that will actually fit on my proper shelves, which I resent. Moving back along the line, so we can slide in nicely to the Terry Pratchett selection. We've got a few other ones. We've got some Andre Norton here. We've got some Niven. The Scarlet Pimpernel is a book I'm very fond of. And a few other miscellaneous selected essays by George Orwell, as well as the more famous 1984. I've just recently got the third of the 1984 trilogy. I never knew it was a trilogy until Stephen told me over at the Outlaw Bookseller. I have it. I haven't read it yet. Looking forward to it. Okay, Charles Platt, The Garbage World stands out as one of the worst books I've ever read. It's there to remind me to never do it again. Christopher Priest, though not nearly as much Christopher Priest as I would like. and then heading into Terry Pratchett. Now, just a couple of years ago, me and my sister read all the Discworld books in order, more or less together, though I read faster. It was great. One of my favourite Terry Pratchett books is still, however, Strata, his most science fiction book, in my opinion, and I just love that book. It's also the only signed Terry Pratchett that I own. Now, I wanted to do these ones in order because, as you can tell, they've been very well read over the years. But most of these I actually purchased new, except for Interesting Times up here, which I was lucky enough to be given an ARC copy or a reader's edition. I'm quite proud of that. That was the first ARC copy I ever read. And it was thanks to Doria down in Tasmania, who I imagine isn't watching this, but still. Anyway, Terry Pratchett, marvellous author, have read all of his Discworld series. A few of the Signs of the Discworld I haven't yet read, but yeah, so they were all here. Some of them I've got replicas for and I just can't get rid of. And it's, I think, noticeable that the covers get darker from the early ones to the last ones, even as the subject matter does. Moving on from Terry Pratchett, though I could talk about him extensively, we've got Good Omens, the book with which he collaborated with Neil Gaiman with. It's with Pratchett because his name is first on the cover, rather than Gaiman, which is over on the other shelf. H. Beam Piper. Also, I don't have enough Poe. Frederick Poe, I should have more of it. But I do have Drunkard's Walk. I don't know why that has been separated from Galaxy. Oh, I'll fix that later. Ian Pears wrote some wonderful art mystery books, which I really enjoyed. Philip Pullman, his Dark Materials, I think they're a great trilogy. And a few other various books. Now, here's an interesting one. Just move the geology. Blind Voices by Tom Reamy is a great science fiction-y, supernaturally book, which I have been rereading for many years, as you can tell from the state of the cover, and it's always been one of my favourites. Sure, it can be fantasy if you like. But right next to it, which you can't read the title because of the very long life it has had, is San Diego, Lightfoot Sioux and Other Stories. That's always been one of my favourite short story collections, and I only figured out when I alphabetized my shelf that they were by Tom Reamy, who wrote Blind Voices. I read a lot, but that doesn't necessarily make me smart, as you can tell. Some Mac Reynolds, including Satellite City, which is one of my favourites by him. The only Anne Rice I've held on to, even though I read all of them, that was my favourite from them, and she got pretty weird at the end there. J.K. Rowling, I know she's one of those who must not be named, but I still love the Harry Potter books. Sue me, whatever. Veronica Roth. I have read the Divergent trilogy. I have not yet read 4, but I put it there because I had a feeling it'd get lost if I didn't. Justina Robson. I read all of the Justina Robsons, which are great science fiction-y, cyberpunk-y, supernaturally books. But when I read them, I was still trying to keep down my book collection, and I ended up selling all of them except for keeping it real. Again, regrets. Peter Rothfuss, Keith Roberts, though I want more Keith Roberts. Joel Rosenberg, who wrote, he interestingly enough wrote fantasy based on role-playing games in the Silver Dragon series, but he also wrote science fiction in his Not for Glory, and Hero. I can't remember what that series was called. So we've got The Wave there. That's a kid's book, but it's a really interesting one from a sociology point of view. I've never let go of that. Anthony Ryan, I did read that whole trilogy. I've got mixed feelings. Michael Swanwick, Vacuum Flowers, his favourite that I've never let go of once I read. And there's some Silverberg, some Satay, and Bob Shaw is there. A little bit of Shear, which I'm probably not pronouncing right. and various miscellaneous ones until we reach the owl. Let me just move the owl. And we can see Cordwain Smith, yes, Spinrad Shaw, but really we're looking at the Simac because I read a lot of Simac. That's the beginning of it. And moving down here, there's the rest. As I believe I mentioned in a video sometime in the last few months, I'm a sucker for Simac, and so I now own, I think, 4 copies of The Werewolf Principle. I own that nice little hardcover. These are the only hardcovers that I really love, by the way, these particular edition ones. And I've got 3 with different artwork. They don't know, they keep accumulating. Okay, Tim Severin Viking, that is fiction. I couldn't fit it on the shelf with the other Tim Severins I have. Roadside Picnic, reviewed recently. Steinbeck, Travels with Charlie, my favourite Steinbeck. And then we go into some Sturgeon, though not nearly enough because we all need more. The Treasure of Wonderwhat and The Way to Dawn World. 2 books I deeply adore while acknowledging that they are not at all well written and they are pretty hokey. There's some Scalzi. More Sartre. I need to put those together. What happened there? Bruce Sterling. There's some Charles Stross. And here we come into my EC Tub collection, which I'm very proud of. I have nearly every single EC Tub in the Dumarest saga, but for the last 2. I've got up to 31, and that's complete, but 32 and 33 I'm still waiting to find. There's some Twain, some Turtle Dove, Sherry Tepper. Walter Tevis wrote Mockingbird, which is one of the best dystopias I had read at the age when I found it, I think 13. I've been rereading it ever since. It's a great book. If you come across it, I thoroughly recommend it. Then we've got some miscellaneous. Arthur Upfield, I imagine no one who isn't Australian has ever heard of. Maybe you've heard of Battle Cry by Leon Uris, great book. Vandermeer, Annihilation, which I loved very, very much, but felt no need to continue with. Onto my Vance collection. There's not that many Vance on this shelf. Vance and Van Vogt for that matter. I have moved most of them back to the to-read shelf because I want to reread them, and I want to remember that. And then we've got some Verne. Tim Winton, again, marvellous Australian author. Terry Winding, one of those. She was another one who started up the whole urban fantasy mythology with Charles DeLint and the others. Gene Wolfe, not nearly enough. I gave away too many of his books, I regret. There's some White, there's some Kate Willem. There's lots and lots of War of the Worlds and Wyndham. You will notice that the War of the Worlds and the Wyndham are many of them in poor condition. That's because I inherited them from my parents who had already read them to death. I guess you could say I'm a descendant of science fiction readers. There are all my Zelazny's, my beloved Zelazny books that I never have parted with those. I've been stupid enough to get rid of some books that I wish I hadn't, but Zelazny I kept. Okay, so from L to Z, here is the large shelf at the bottom where the books wouldn't fit onto the top. You can see my copy of Alphantasm by Tanith Lee. There aren't many people I'm willing to hold onto hardcovers for. She's one of them. So is Richard Morgan. He's got large books. There's a couple of Sin City trade paperbacks there. Blackfish City by Sam J. Miller, which completely stunned me with how good it was. A couple of Anne McCaffreys and McKinleys that don't fit up the top. My Terry Pratchett hardbacks, another author I'm willing to put up with hardbacks for. The J.K. Rowlings that didn't fit with the other. More Tim Severin, Charles Stross, and a whole heap of miscellaneous books such as The Golem and the Djinn, Roger Zelazny, who collaborated with Robert Sheckley to bring me the head of Prince Charming, some Sturgeon, and some Silverberg. So that was my first bespoke bookshelf. I still adore it. I still think it was a great idea. Where to next in the bookshelf saga? Well, over there above the door is an empty space serving no purpose. I'm hoping to get a tradesman to come and fit a shelf in there sooner or later. And likewise, all that area, I can just see how this is going to go light-wise. seems to me to be wasted space. I could fit another shelf running just above the windowsill, balancing on it, and that should take me A through to C, freeing up more space on my primary fiction shelves for the unread books, which will doubtless be needing space before too long.